Lily Dawson's world changed when Bastian Whitlock, a ruthless businessman, invited her to a gala with an ulterior motive. But secrets from the past and the legacy of three women would redefine everything they thought they knew about power, forgiveness, and love. As betrayal turns to redemption and forgotten dreams are revived on the runway, the Rose legacy becomes more than just a collection. It becomes a symbol of courage and transformation. Can love truly bloom amidst thorns of ambition and regret? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Bastian Whitlock stood at the window of his penthouse office, looking down at the gardeners working below. At 45, he had everything money could buy: designer suits, luxury cars, and a reputation that made people tremble. His company, Elite Lifestyle Brands, was celebrating its 10th anniversary next month, and he wanted everything to be perfect. "Mr. Whitlock?" His assistant Jennifer knocked on the door. "The event planners are here to discuss the gala." Bastian straightened his tie and turned around. "Send them in and get me a coffee." "Black like my soul," he said with a smirk. His jokes always made people laugh whether they wanted to or not. The planning meeting dragged on for hours. Everything had to be the best. The finest champagne, the most expensive flowers, and a guest list that read like a who's who of New York society. This wasn't just a party, it was a statement. "We need something different for the garden entrance," Bastian said, tapping his pen against the desk. "Something that will make people's jaws drop the moment they arrive." That's when he heard voices outside his window. The gardeners were taking their lunch break, and one voice carried above the others, cheerful, proud, and completely out of place in Bastian's world of power lunches and board meetings. "My Lily, she's something special," the voice said. "Smart as a whip and talented too. She makes these dresses that could be in any fashion magazine, I tell you, better than those fancy designers my boss hires." Bastian walked to the window and looked down. It was Henry Dawson, the head gardener, talking to his crew. The old man had worked for the company for years, always with a smile on his face that Bastian found irritating. "Did you hear that?" Bastian turned to Jennifer, who was organizing papers from the meeting. "Our gardener thinks his daughter is the next Vera Wang." He laughed, but then stopped as an idea formed in his mind. "Find out more about this girl. What did he say her name was? Lily?" Jennifer nodded, already typing on her tablet. "Lily Dawson, sir. She works at the Sweet Bean Cafe downtown and designs clothes in her spare time. She's 28, graduated from community college with a degree in fashion design and—" "Perfect," Bastian interrupted. "Send her an invitation to the gala. Make it personal from me. Say I heard about her talent from her father and would love to have her attend. Oh, and mention that if she comes, I'll donate $50,000 to her father's garden restoration project." Jennifer looked up, surprised. "Sir?" "Trust me, Jennifer, it'll be entertaining. These people who think talent and hard work are all you need, they need a reality check sometimes. And our guests could use some amusement." Later that day, Bastian watched as Henry tended to the roses in the courtyard. The old man hummed while he worked, completely content despite his humble position. It annoyed Bastian how some people could be so happy with so little. "Mr. Dawson," Bastian called out, walking over to him. "I hear your daughter is quite the designer." Henry's face lit up. "Oh, yes, sir. My Lily, she's incredible. She makes these beautiful—" "Yes, well, I've invited her to our anniversary gala." Bastian cut him off. "I thought it would be nice to have some fresh talent there." The joy on Henry's face made Bastian almost feel guilty. Almost. "Really, sir? Oh, thank you. Lily will be so excited. She's been dreaming of an opportunity like this." "I'm sure she has," Bastian said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I look forward to meeting her." Back in his office, Bastian imagined how the night would play out. The girl would show up in some homemade dress, try to mingle with his sophisticated guests, and quickly realize she didn't belong in his world. It would be a valuable lesson for both father and daughter. "Jennifer," he called out, "make sure the photographers from Social Scene magazine will be there. I want every moment of the gala captured." As the sun set over the city, Bastian felt pleased with himself. The gala was 2 weeks away, and he had just added what he thought would be the perfect entertainment to his perfect evening. Little did he know that his carefully planned night was about to take a very different turn, one that would shake his world to its core. That night, across town in a tiny apartment above a noisy street, Lily Dawson opened an envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an invitation that would change her life forever, though not in the way its sender intended. Her father burst through, the door still in his work clothes. "Lily, did you get it, the invitation?" "I did, Dad," she said, reading it again. "But why would Bastian Whitlock invite me to his gala and offer such a huge donation to your project?" Henry hugged his daughter tight. "Because he must have heard about your talent. This is your chance, sweetheart, your chance to show everyone what you can do." Lily looked at the invitation, then at her sketches spread across her small desk. She thought about all the nights she'd spent sewing after long shifts at the cafe, all the designs she'd created while others slept. A slow smile spread across her face. "You're right, Dad," she said, determination gleaming in her eyes. "This is my chance. And I'm going to make sure Mr. Bastian Whitlock never forgets the night he invited Lily Dawson to his party." The Sweet Bean Cafe was busy as usual, but Lily Dawson's mind was elsewhere. As she served coffee and muffins, her thoughts kept drifting to the fabric she'd bought with her savings. Midnight blue silk that felt like water running through her fingers. "Earth to Lily." Her co-worker Maria waved a hand in front of her face. "That's the third time you've filled that cup too full. What's going on with you?" Lily pulled Maria aside. "Remember that design I showed you? The one with the sweetheart neckline and flowing skirt? I'm making it for Bastian Whitlock's anniversary gala." Maria's eyes went wide. "The Bastian Whitlock? The one whose face is on all those business magazines? Girl, how did you get invited to that?" "He invited me himself, said he heard about my designs from Dad." Lily wiped down the counter, trying to stay busy. "But something feels off about it. Why would someone like him care about someone like me?" "Maybe he's not as bad as everyone says," Maria suggested, but her tone said she didn't believe it. Everyone knew about Bastian Whitlock's reputation for being cruel to people he thought were beneath him. After her shift, Lily rushed home to work on her dress. Her tiny apartment had turned into a makeshift studio with patterns spread across every surface and pins scattered everywhere. She'd been working on it every free moment for the past week. "Lily," her father's voice came from the doorway. He was still in his gardening clothes, dirt under his fingernails from a long day's work. "I brought you some dinner. You need to eat." "Thanks, Dad." She looked up from her sewing machine. "How was work today? Did Mr. Whitlock say anything else?" "About the gala?" Henry's face darkened slightly. "He keeps asking about you, what you're planning to wear if you're nervous about meeting his fancy friends. There's something in his voice I don't like." Lily stopped sewing. "You think he invited me as some kind of joke?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I've worked for men like him for 30 years. They don't do anything without a reason." He put the takeout container on her table. "Maybe we should forget about it. The garden project isn't worth you being humiliated." Lily stood up, holding her half-finished dress. "No, Dad. If he thinks he can make fun of us, he's got another thing coming. I'm going to that party, and I'm going to show him and all his rich friends what real talent looks like." Across town, Bastian was having dinner with his sister, Victoria, in his elegant penthouse apartment. "You did what?" Victoria put down her wineglass. "Bastian, that's cruel even for you." "Here's just a little social experiment," he said, cutting into his steak. "Besides, I'm doing them a favor. The garden project gets funded, and the girl learns a valuable lesson about staying in her lane." Victoria shook her head. "You know, this is exactly why Mother always said you'd end up alone. You've got everything money can buy, but you're missing something important." "Oh? And what's that?" "A heart," Victoria said simply. "One of these days, someone's going to show you that all your money and power don't make you better than anyone else. I just hope I'm there to see it." The days flew by as Lily worked tirelessly on her dress. She took extra shifts at the cafe to pay for the perfect shoes and accessories. Every night, she stayed up late sewing, determined to create something extraordinary. 2 days before the gala, Bastian stopped by the garden during his lunch break. He found Henry pruning the rose bushes. "How's your daughter doing, Dawson? Ready for the big night?" "She's working very hard on her dress, Mr. Whitlock," Henry said carefully. "She's very grateful for the invitation." Bastian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure she is. It must be exciting for someone like her to attend an event like this. I do hope she doesn't feel too out of place." That night, Henry told Lily about the conversation. Instead of being discouraged, she worked even harder, her determination growing with every stitch. "You'll see, Dad," she said, holding up the nearly finished dress. "Mr. Whitlock thinks he's teaching me a lesson, but I'm going to teach him one instead." The night before the gala, Lily finally finished her dress. She hung it up and stepped back to look at it. The midnight blue silk cascaded from the sweetheart neckline to the floor, with delicate beading she'd done by hand-catching. The light like stars in a night sky. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever created. Maria came over to help her prepare for the next day. As they did a final fitting, she whistled low. "Lily, honey, you're going to give those society ladies a run for their money. Bastian Whitlock won't know what hit him." Lily looked at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman reflected back at her. "That's the plan," she said softly. "That's exactly the plan." Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Bastian was reviewing the final guest list. He paused when he came to Lily's name, imagining the entertainment her appearance would provide for his guests. "Sir," Jennifer interrupted his thoughts, "the press is confirmed for tomorrow night. Social Scene magazine is sending their top photographer." "Perfect," Bastian said, leaning back in his chair. "Make sure they get plenty of pictures. Tomorrow night is going to be quite memorable." He had no idea just how right he was, but not for the reasons he expected. As the sun set over New York City, two people prepared for the same event with very different expectations. One planned to teach a lesson about knowing one's place, while the other prepared to prove that true elegance comes from the heart, not the wallet. The stage was set for a night that would change everything. The night of the gala arrived with a buzz of excitement in the air. Bastian stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse, adjusting his bow tie. Everything was perfect, from his custom-made tuxedo to the fresh flowers adorning every surface of the grand ballroom downstairs. "The first guests are arriving," Jennifer reported, tablet in hand. "And the press is already stationed at the entrance." Bastian smiled. "Excellent. Make sure they're ready when our special guest arrives. I want every moment captured." The ballroom of the elite tower was transformed into a wonderland of crystal and light. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the city's most powerful people filed in wearing their finest clothes. Bastian greeted them all with practiced charm, but his eyes kept darting to the grand staircase. "Waiting for someone?" Victoria appeared, at his side, stunning in a red designer gown. "Your little social experiment, perhaps? Just making sure everything runs smoothly," Bastian replied, sipping his champagne. "Though I must admit I'm curious to see what the gardener's daughter considers appropriate attire for an event like this." Outside the tower, a taxi pulled up to the curb. Lily sat in the back, her heart pounding. She could see the photographers and the crowd of elegantly dressed people entering the building. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, touching the silk of her dress for reassurance. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the taxi. The cameras started flashing immediately. They photographed everyone who arrived at the gala. But something strange happened. Instead of quickly moving on to the next arrival, the photographers kept their cameras trained on Lily. As she ascended the steps to the entrance, whispers began to spread through the crowd. People stopped to stare. A woman in a designer dress nudged her companion and asked, "Who is she? Is that the new European princess everyone's talking about?" Inside the ballroom, Bastian was in the middle of a conversation with an important client when he noticed a change in the atmosphere. The usual chatter of the crowd died down, replaced by excited murmurs. He turned toward the grand staircase and froze. Standing at the top of the stairs was a vision in midnight blue. The silk dress caught every light in the room, making it look like its wearer was wrapped in the night sky itself. But it was the woman wearing it that truly commanded attention. Lily stood tall and confident, her dark hair elegantly styled, her makeup subtle but perfect. "Who is that?" someone whispered nearby. "I've never seen anything like that dress," another guest said. "It must be from Paris." Bastian couldn't move. This couldn't be the gardener's daughter. This couldn't be the girl he'd invited as a joke. But it was. And she was making every other woman in the room with their expensive designer dresses look overdressed and ordinary. Victoria appeared at his side again. "Close your mouth, dear brother. You're staring." "I don't understand," Bastian muttered. "She's supposed to be a joke," Victoria finished for him. "It seems the joke's on you. That dress she's wearing? Look at how it moves, how it fits her. That's not store-bought or borrowed. That's an original design, and a brilliant one." Lily descended the stairs with grace, acknowledging the admiring looks with a gentle smile. She'd practiced this walk for hours in her tiny apartment, determined not to trip or stumble. Every step brought her closer to Bastian, who still hadn't moved from his spot. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parted to let her through. She walked directly to Bastian, her heart pounding but her exterior calm. "Mr. Whitlock," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Thank you for inviting me to your celebration. I hope I'm not too underdressed for the occasion." The irony in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Bastian, for the first time in years, found himself completely speechless. "Miss Dawson," he finally managed. "You look unexpected." "Do I?" She raised an eyebrow. "How did you expect me to look, Mr. Whitlock?" Before he could answer, they were interrupted by Diana Reynolds, the editor of Social Scene magazine. "Darling, that dress is extraordinary. You must tell me who designed it." Lily turned to the editor with a genuine smile. "I did, actually. I'm a fashion designer." "You're joking," Diana exclaimed, running her hands over the silk. "The beadwork, the draping, it's exquisite. Bastian, you've been holding out on us. Why didn't you tell anyone you were launching a new designer?" Bastian opened his mouth, but no words came out. He watched as Diana pulled out her phone and began typing frantically. "We need to do a feature on you immediately," Diana told Lily. "The world needs to know about this talent." More people gathered around Lily, asking questions about her dress and her designs. She answered them all with grace and humility, but her eyes kept finding Bastian's. Each time they did, her look seemed to say, "Is this what you expected?" Victoria nudged her brother. Well, it seems your little plan to humiliate her has turned into her triumph instead. How does it feel to be so thoroughly outplayed?" Bastian watched as Lily charmed person after person. She was natural, genuine, and completely at ease. Everything his usual social circle was not. Her laugh was real, her smile reached her eyes, and her talent was undeniable. "I need a drink," he muttered, heading for the bar. But even as he walked away, he couldn't stop looking back at her. The girl he'd invited as a joke had just become the star of his party, and he had no idea how to handle it. Near the entrance, Henry the gardener watched from a discreet corner, tears of pride in his eyes. His daughter, his Lily, was blooming, in front of everyone. And the man who had tried to make her feel small was the one who ended up looking foolish. The night was young, and no one in that glittering ballroom could predict how this unexpected turn of events would change everything, especially the man who thought he was above it all. Bastian stood at the bar, downing his second scotch. He couldn't take his eyes off Lily as she moved through the crowd. Every important person in the room wanted to talk to her, and she handled each conversation with natural grace. "Another drink, sir?" the bartender asked. "No," Bastian said firmly. He needed a clear head to deal with this situation. This wasn't how the evening was supposed to go at all. Across the room, Lily was talking with a group of fashion buyers when Miranda Stone, Bastian's biggest business rival, approached her. Miranda was known for her sharp tongue and sharper business practices. "So," Miranda said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "you're the gardener's daughter everyone's talking about. How quaint. Tell me, dear, did you sew this dress in between serving coffee at that little cafe?" The room went quiet. Lily felt all eyes turned to her, waiting to see how she would handle this attack. She thought about her father, who had taught her that dignity was more powerful than anger. "Yes, actually," Lily replied with a warm smile, "I did sew it after my shifts at the cafe, the same way I worked my way through design school, and the same way I've built my portfolio, one stitch at a time, with pride in every piece." Miranda's face twisted into a sneer. "Oh, how inspiring. A real Cinderella story, but dear, this isn't a fairy tale. The real fashion world isn't some little sewing circle. That's enough, Miranda." Everyone turned in surprise. Bastian had appeared beside Lily, his voice firm and cold. "Miss Dawson is my guest," he continued, "and her talent speaks for itself. Or are you feeling threatened by someone who can create something this extraordinary without a team of designers and $1 million budget?" Miranda's face turned red. She opened her mouth to respond, but Bastian cut her off with a look that could freeze fire. She turned and walked away, nearly knocking over a waiter in her hurry to escape. Lily looked at Bastian with surprise. "Thank you, but I could have handled that." "I know you could have," he said quietly, "but you shouldn't have to, not at my party." He paused, looking uncomfortable. Would you like to get some air? The garden terrace is quiet this time of night." Lily hesitated, then nodded. They walked together to the terrace, leaving the noise and crowds behind. The garden was beautiful at night, with tiny lights twinkling in the trees and the sweet scent of roses filling the air. "My father planted those roses," Lily said, breaking the silence. "He talks about them like they're his children." Bastian looked at the roses, then at Lily. "He talks about you the same way. Even more proudly, actually." He took a deep breath. "Listen, Miss Dawson." "Lily," she corrected him. "If you're going to apologize, you might as well use my first name. What makes you think I'm going to apologize?" Because despite what everyone says about you, Mr. Whitlock, I don't think you're as cold as you pretend to be. You wouldn't have defended me in there if you were." Bastien was quiet for a moment. "Bastien," he finally said, "and yes, I do owe you an apology. I invited you here tonight for all the wrong reasons." "I know," Lily said simply. "I knew from the moment I got the invitation. The question is why? Why did you feel the need to try to humiliate someone you'd never even met?" The question hit him hard. He walked to the garden railing, looking out at the city lights. "Because it's what I do. It's who I am. I see someone who seems too good to be true, too genuine, and He trailed off. "And you try to prove they're fake," Lily finished. "Because if everyone's fake, then you don't have to feel bad about your own walls." Bastien turned to look at her, surprised by her insight. The lights from the garden caught the beading on her dress, making her seem to glow. "You're very perceptive," he said softly. "And you're not as complicated as you think you are," she replied with a small smile. "You know, my dad always says that the most beautiful roses often have the sharpest thorns, but that doesn't mean they're not worth cultivating." Inside the ballroom, the party continued in full swing, but time seemed to slow down on the terrace. Bastien found himself telling Lily things he'd never told anyone, about growing up with impossible expectations, about building his company through sheer determination, about how lonely it was at the top. Lily listened, really listened, in a way no one had in years. She didn't judge or offer empty sympathies. Instead, she shared her own story, about losing her mother young, about working multiple jobs to pursue her dreams, about refusing to let anyone else define her worth. "You're quite extraordinary, Lily Dawson," Bastien said finally, "and I'm not just talking about your design talent." "And you're not quite the villain everyone thinks you are, Bastien Whitlock," she replied, "though you do a very good impression of one." A waiter appeared at the terrace door. "Mr. Whitlock, they're ready for your speech, sir." Reality crashed. Back in. Bastien straightened his tie, the businessman mask sliding back into place. But something had changed. The wall he'd built around himself had developed a crack. "Will you save a dance for me?" he asked Lily. "After the speech." She studied him for a moment. "That depends on how sincere your public apology is." "Public apology?" "Of course," she said with a mischievous smile. "You didn't think a private one would be enough, did you? Not after you planned to humiliate me in front of all these people." Bastien looked at her with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "You drive a hard bargain, Miss Dawson." "I learned from the best, Mr. Whitlock. My father always says that true grace includes forgiveness, but it doesn't exclude justice." As they walked back into the ballroom together, neither of them noticed Victoria watching from the shadows, a knowing smile on her face. The night was about to take another unexpected turn, and her brother's carefully controlled world would never be the same. The ballroom fell silent as Bastien took his place at the microphone. Crystal glasses clinked softly, and camera flashes sparked from every corner. Everyone expected the usual speech, charming, confident, maybe a little arrogant. But tonight was different. Tonight, Bastien Whitlock was about to surprise them all. He looked out at the crowd, his prepared speech feeling heavy in his pocket. His eyes found Lily standing near the back of the room. She gave him a small nod, and somehow that simple gesture gave him the courage to do something he'd never done before: tell the truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice strong and clear, "we're here tonight to celebrate 10 years of elite lifestyle brands, 10 years of success, of growth, of what I always thought was excellence. But tonight, I learned what true excellence really looks like." A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the speech they were expecting. "Earlier this evening, I had a plan. A cruel, arrogant plan to teach someone a lesson about knowing their place in our world. I invited a talented young designer here, thinking I could humiliate her for my own amusement." Gasps echoed through the room. Miranda Stone smirked while Victoria watched her brother with proud tears in her eyes. "Instead," Bastien continued, "she taught me a lesson about grace, about genuine talent, and about what it means to have true class." He looked directly at Lily. "Miss Lily Dawson, would you please join me up here?" The crowd parted as Lily made her way to the stage. She moved with quiet dignity, her blue dress shimming under the lights. When she reached Bastien's side, he turned to address her directly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Miss Dawson, I owe you a public apology. I invited you here thinking your presence would be a joke. Instead, you've shown everyone in this room, especially me, what real elegance looks like. It's not about expensive labels or social status. It's about character, talent, and the grace to rise above other people's cruelty." Lily's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to be quite this honest. And so, Bastien turned back to the crowd. I'm making an announcement. Elite Lifestyle Brands is launching a new division, one dedicated to discovering and supporting emerging designers. And our first featured designer will be Lily Dawson, if she'll accept. The room erupted in applause. Diana Reynolds was already typing frantically on her phone, no doubt preparing the story for tomorrow's society pages. But Lily hadn't answered yet. Miss Dawson? Bastien turned to her. I know I haven't earned your trust, but I'd like the chance to try. What do you say? Lily took the microphone. The room held its breath. Mr. Whitlock, she began, her voice steady. When I came here tonight, I expected to face mockery and judgment. Instead, I found something unexpected. Honesty. Real honesty. Not the kind that comes easy, but the kind that costs something. She paused, looking out at the crowd. My father always says that you can judge a person not by their mistakes, but by how they try to fix them. She turned to Bastien. I accept your offer, Mr. Whitlock, but on one condition. Name it, he said without hesitation. The first project of this new division will be a scholarship program for design students who work service jobs to pay for their education. Because talent doesn't just exist in penthouses and private schools. Sometimes it's serving coffee or tending gardens, just waiting for a real chance. The applause was deafening. Victoria was openly crying now, and even Miranda Stone looked impressed despite herself. Bastien smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Done, and please, call me Bastien. Then you should call me Lily, she replied with a soft smile. The orchestra began to play, and Bastien held out his hand. I believe you promised me a dance if my apology was sincere enough. Did I? Lily's eyes sparkled with amusement. Well, I suppose that apology earned at least one dance. As they moved onto the dance floor, the crowd watched in amazement. Bastien Whitlock, known for his coldness and arrogance, was looking at the gardener's daughter like she was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. You're full of surprises, Lily said as they waltzed. I didn't expect you to be quite so public with your apology. Yes, well, Bastien pulled her a little closer. Someone recently suggested that I might not be as complicated as I think I am. Sometimes the simple truth is the best approach. From his spot near the garden doors, Henry Dawson watched his daughter dance with his boss, pride and worry battling in his heart. Victoria appeared beside him. Don't worry, she said softly. I haven't seen my brother look at anyone like that since. Well, ever. That's what worries me, Henry replied. She's worked so hard to get where she is. I don't want her heart to get broken. I think, Victoria said thoughtfully, watching the couple on the dance floor, that my brother is more in danger of a broken heart than your daughter. She already knows who she is. He's just beginning to figure it out. As the music played and the couple danced, the night seemed to hold its breath. This was more than just a dance, more than just an apology. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. But as in all good stories, the moment of triumph often comes just before the greatest challenge. And watching from the shadows, Miranda Stone was already plotting how to turn this fairy tale into a nightmare. Enjoy your moment, little designer, she whispered, pulling out her phone to make a call. It won't last long. The morning after the gala, Lily's small apartment was flooded with sunlight and the smell of fresh coffee. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the morning's headlines on her laptop. Cinderella story at Elite. Gala unknown designer steals the show. Bastien Whitlock's surprising announcement. Elite Brands takes new direction. Fashion's new it girl. Meet Lily Dawson. I still can't believe it really happened, she said to Maria, who had come over. First thing in the morning with celebratory breakfast pastries. Girl, I saw the videos. The way he looked at you during that dance. Maria grinned. That was not just business interest. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Bastien. Car will pick you up at 9 a.m. for the office tour. Hope you're ready to start changing the fashion world. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Last night had felt like a dream, but this was real. She was about to step into a whole new world. Across town, Bastien was already in his office, but he couldn't focus on his morning meetings. His mind kept drifting to the dance they'd shared, to the way Lily's hand had felt in his. Sir? Jennifer's voice snapped him back to reality. Miranda Stone is here. She says it's urgent. Bastien frowned. Send her in. Miranda swept into the office wearing a predatory smile. Bastien, darling, quite a show last night. The press is eating it up, the ruthless businessman humbled by the simple gardener's daughter. Very romantic. What? Do you want Miranda? She settled into a chair, crossing her legs elegantly. To warn you, you're playing a dangerous game. Mixing business with pleasure never ends well. And let's be honest, do you really think someone like her belongs in our world? Someone like her? Bastian's voice was dangerously quiet. You mean someone with actual talent? Oh, please. Miranda rolled her eyes. One dress doesn't make her a designer. And speaking of that dress, she pulled out her phone, showing him a photo. Interesting how similar it is to this design from a small European boutique from last season. Almost identical in some ways. Bastian felt his stomach drop. What are you implying? Nothing yet. Just pointing out that reputation is everything in our business. It would be a shame if your new protégé turned out to be a fraud, especially after that touching speech about honesty. Meanwhile, Lily had arrived at Elite Tower. The security guard smiled warmly. Everyone had seen the news. She was escorted to the executive floor, where Victoria was waiting. Good morning, future fashion queen. Victoria greeted her with a hug. Ready to see your new workspace? The next hour was a whirlwind tour. The design studio was bigger than Lily's entire apartment, with everything a designer could dream of. But it was the small details that touched her heart. A vase of fresh roses from her father's garden on her desk, and a framed photo of her mother that someone must have gotten from her dad. This is too much, Lily whispered, touching the photo. Nonsense, Victoria said. Bastian wanted you to feel at home here. Speaking of my brother, she hesitated. Lily, I need to tell you something. In our world, success makes you targets, and you've just become a very big target. What do you mean? Miranda Stone was here earlier. But before Victoria could finish, Bastian appeared in the doorway. His face was tense. Lily, we need to talk. There's been an accusation about your gala dress design. Lily felt her world tilt. What kind of accusation? Miranda Stone is claiming it might be copied from another designer. She has photos that show some similarities to an existing design. That's impossible. Lily pulled out her phone, opening her design portfolio. I have all my sketches, my progress photos, everything. I've been working on this design for months. Bastian's face softened with relief. You can prove the design process. Of course I can. Every single step. I post my works in progress on my design blog. I have the original sketches, fabric swatches, everything. Victoria smiled triumphantly. Miranda's going to regret this. She just gave you the perfect opportunity to showcase your creative process to the whole industry. But Bastian was quiet, his face dark with anger. She's not going to stop you. No, this was just her opening move. I'm not afraid of her, Lily said firmly. I've worked too hard to let someone like her scare me away. Bastian moved closer, taking her hand. Lily, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't... Stop, she interrupted. This isn't about you anymore, Bastian. This is about proving that talent and hard work matter more than social status and mind games. And I'm going to prove it. Their eyes met, and the tension in the room shifted from professional to something more personal. Victoria quietly slipped out, closing the door behind her. You're remarkable, Bastian said softly. I keep thinking I know what to expect from you, and you keep surprising me. Good, Lily smiled, because I'm just getting started. But outside the office, Miranda Stone was already making more calls, setting up her next move. She had underestimated Lily once. She wouldn't make that mistake again. And in the garden below, Henry Dawson tended his roses, unaware that he held a secret that could either destroy everything his daughter was building or protect her from what was coming. A secret about her mother, about the real reason they had started over in New York, and about why Miranda Stone's vendetta might be more personal than anyone suspected. Henry Dawson's hands trembled as he opened the old shoebox he kept hidden in his closet. Inside were yellowed photographs and newspaper clippings he hadn't looked at in years. But Miranda Stone's appearance had changed everything. One photo in particular caught his eye. A group shot from 25 years ago. In it, 3 women smiled at the camera. Rose Dawson, his late wife and Lily's mother, a young Miranda Stone, and Catherine Whitlock, Bastian's mother. They were standing in front of a small fashion boutique, their arms around each other. I should have known this day would come, Henry whispered to himself. His phone buzzed. A text from Miranda. Coffee for old time's sake, the usual place. Across town, Lily was in her new office, going through her design archives with Bastian. Photographs and sketches covered every surface as they built her, defense against Miranda's accusations. Look at these date stamps, Bastian said, examining her blog posts. Every step of the design process is documented, Miranda doesn't have a case. Then why do I feel like we're missing something? Lily wondered. The way she smiled when she made those accusations, it was like she knew something we don't. Bastian's phone rang. It was Victoria. Turn on the financial news. Now. They rushed to the TV mounted on the wall. Miranda Stone was giving an interview, looking elegant and concerned. While Elite Brand's new initiative to support emerging designers is admirable, she was saying, we must ensure proper vetting. I've recently uncovered some disturbing information about the history of Rose Designs, a small boutique that failed mysteriously 25 years ago. The similarities between their designs and Miss Dawson's work are troubling. Lily froze. Rose Designs? That was my mother's shop. But she closed it when I was a baby before we moved to New York. How does Miranda know about that? Bastian was already on his phone. Jennifer, get me everything you can find about Rose Designs, especially any connection to Miranda Stone. At the small cafe across from Central Park, Henry sat across from Miranda, his face pale but determined. What do you want, Miranda? She stirred her coffee slowly. You know exactly what I want, Henry. The truth about what happened to Rose Designs. About what happened to Catherine Whitlock's investment. About why Rose really left town. Those were different times, Henry said quietly. We were all different people. Yes, we were. Catherine was alive then, and her son wasn't the cold businessman he became after her death. Rose was healthy and full of dreams, and Miranda's voice hardened. I was naive enough to trust my best friends. Meanwhile, in her office, Lily was going through old boxes her father had stored away. She found a dusty portfolio with her mother's design sketches. These are amazing, she breathed, showing them to Bastian. Look at how she used these flowing lines, the way she stopped suddenly, her face going pale. What's wrong? Bastian asked. These designs, some of them look like mine. Not exactly the same, but the style, the technique. Lily sat down hard in her chair. I always thought my style came naturally to me, but I've been inspired by her work without even knowing it. I used to play with her old sketches when I was little before she got sick. Bastian squeezed her shoulder. That's not copying, Lily, that's legacy. That's your mother's gift to you. But why didn't my father ever tell me about Rose Designs? Why don't I remember anything about it? Victoria burst into the office holding a stack of old documents. Because there's more to the story. Rose Designs wasn't just your mother's shop, Lily. It was a partnership between 3 women, Rose Dawson, Miranda Stone, and... She paused, looking at Bastian. Our mother, Catherine Whitlock. Bastian felt like he'd been punched. What? Mother? She never mentioned... Because it ended badly, Victoria said softly. Really badly. The shop failed after some designs were allegedly stolen. There were accusations, lawsuits, and then Rose left town suddenly with Henry and little Lily. Back at the cafe, Miranda was showing Henry an old contract. Catherine invested everything she had in that shop, Miranda said. When it failed, the stress contributed to her illness. Bastian was just a teenager when she died, but it changed him, made him hard, distrustful, and now his path has crossed with Rose's daughter. It wasn't what you think, Henry interrupted. Rose didn't steal those designs. She was protecting someone who was desperate and afraid. Who? Miranda demanded. But Henry stood up. Ask yourself why Rose would give up everything. Her shop, her friendships, her reputation, to take the blame. Ask yourself why Catherine's last letter was addressed to Rose, not you. He walked out, leaving Miranda staring at her coffee. She pulled out an old photograph. 3 young women, arms linked, dreams still intact. She touched the faces, gently, remembering. In Lily's office, she and Bastian were still processing the revelations when Henry appeared in the doorway. Dad? Lily stood up. What's going on? Why didn't you ever tell me about Mom's partnership with Miranda Stone and Catherine Whitlock? Henry looked at Bastian, then back at his daughter. Because the truth about what happened back then could hurt a lot of people. People I promised to protect. I think it's time for that truth, Bastian said quietly. All of it. Henry nodded slowly. Yes, I suppose it is. But first, there's something you need to see, Lily. Something your mother left for you, in case this day ever came. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, old and yellowed, with "For Lily" written in elegant handwriting on the front. Your mother wrote this the night before we left town. She made me promise to give it to you if the past ever caught up with us. He handed it to Lily with trembling hands. I think she always knew this day would come. Lily took the letter, her heart pounding. As she opened it, none of them could have predicted how its contents would change everything, not just for Lily and Bastian, but for Miranda Stone and the legacy of 3 women whose friendship had ended in secrets and regret. Lily's hands shook as she opened her mother's letter. Bastien stood close behind her, while Henry sat heavily in a nearby chair. Victoria quietly closed the office door, giving them privacy. "My dearest Lily," she read aloud, her mother's words bringing tears to her eyes. "If you're reading this, then the past has finally caught up with us, and it's time you knew the truth about Rose Designs and why we left everything behind." Lily took a deep breath and continued reading. The night. Everything changed. Miranda came to the shop in tears. She had lost everything gambling, not just her own money, but funds from our business account. She was desperate and afraid. Catherine, always the practical one, suggested we close the shop quietly and start over. But Miranda panicked. She had taken designs from an upcoming French designer, hoping to sell them quickly and replace the money before anyone noticed. When the design theft was discovered, I knew I had to protect both my friends. Catherine had invested her family's money in our shop, money meant for her children's future. If the truth about Miranda came out, both families would be ruined. So I took the blame. I claimed I had stolen the designs, and we left town that night. Catherine knew the truth. That's why her last letter was to me. She understood my sacrifice, but the stress of keeping that secret contributed to her illness. I've carried that guilt every day since. My darling daughter, I'm telling you this not to burden you, but to explain why talent and integrity meant so much to me. Why I spent my final years teaching you to design with your heart and soul. Your gift is real, Lily. Every sketch, every stitch, it's all yours, born from your own creativity and hard work. I never wanted you to pay for the sins of the past, but if Miranda has brought this up now, it means she's still running from her own guilt. The proof of what really happened is in my old sketchbook, the red one with the broken spine. I kept everything, the bank statements, Miranda's confession letter, everything. The truth isn't meant to hurt anyone, Lily. It's meant to heal old wounds and free us all from the weight of secrets. With all my love, Mom. Lily looked up from the letter to find Bastien staring out the window, his shoulders tense. "The money Mother lost," he said quietly. "It wasn't because of Rose. She was protecting everyone." Henry stood up slowly. "Your mother, Catherine, she was a good woman. She understood why Rose did what she did. That's why she made sure I got the gardening job here after she passed. She wanted to make sure we were taken care of, even if she couldn't do it openly." Victoria wiped tears from her eyes. "All these years Miranda has been carrying this guilt. It explains why she's so desperate to discredit Lily. She's still trying to hide from the truth." Lily went to her father, hugging him tight. "Why didn't you tell me? Your mother wanted you to make your own way without the shadow of the past hanging over you. And you have, sweetheart. You've become everything she dreamed you would be." A knock at the door interrupted them. Jennifer poked her head in. "Mr. Whitlock, Miranda Stone is here. She's calling an emergency board meeting. She's telling everyone she has proof that Rose Designs was involved in design theft and that Lily is following in her mother's footsteps." Bastien's face hardened. "Good. Let's end this once and for all." He turned to Lily. "Do you have your mother's sketchbook?" "It's at home in her old trunk." "Then let's go get it." "Victoria, stall the board. Tell them I'm bringing evidence that will settle this matter completely." He looked at Lily. "That is, if you want to reveal all this, it's your mother's story to tell." Lily straightened her shoulders. "No, it's everyone's story, and it's time for the truth, all of it." They rushed to Lily's apartment, finding the old red sketchbook exactly where she remembered it. Inside were all the documents Rose had preserved, bank statements showing Miranda's withdrawals, her tearful confession letter, everything. But there was something else too. A letter from Catherine Whitlock, written just days before her death. "My dearest Rose, your sacrifice has weighed on my heart all these years. Miranda still doesn't know I knew the truth. I've watched my son grow hard and cynical, believing that talent and trust always lead to betrayal. But perhaps there's still hope for healing. I've arranged for Henry to work in the gardens here, and someday when the time is right, perhaps the truth can bring our families back together. Take care of your little Lily. She has your spirit. I can see it already. With love, Catherine." Back at Elite Tower, the boardroom was filled with tension. Miranda stood at the front, laying out her accusations with well-practiced concern. "It's such a shame," she was saying, "but the evidence is clear. Rose Designs was built on stolen work, and now..." The doors burst open. Bastien walked in, followed by Lily, Henry, and Victoria. Without a word, Lily walked to the front of the room and placed the red sketchbook on the table. "You're right, Miranda," she said clearly. "We should talk about Rose Designs. We should talk about everything that happened 25 years ago, including what really happened to the money." Miranda's face went pale as she recognized the sketchbook. "Where did you get that?" "From my mother. She kept it all, Miranda, everything. She protected you once, but I won't let you destroy her reputation again." Bastien stepped forward. "The board meeting is cancelled. Miranda, I think it's time for a private conversation. About the past, about my mother, and about how we move forward from here." As the board members filed out, Miranda sank into a chair, looking suddenly old and tired. The weight of 25 years of guilt showed on her face. "I never meant," she began, then stopped. "Rose was my best friend. Catherine, too. I destroyed everything because I was too ashamed to ask for help." Lily sat down across from her. "Then let's fix it. Not just for my mother's memory or for Catherine's, but for all of us." Bastien watched this exchange, seeing both women in a new light. The truth hadn't brought the destruction Miranda had feared all these years. Instead, it had opened a door to something none of them had expected, the chance for redemption. But as they began their difficult conversation, none of them noticed Jennifer in the doorway, talking quietly on her phone to a reporter from Social Scene magazine. The story of Rose Designs was about to become public, but not in the way any of them had planned. The morning headlines hit like a bomb. Fashion dynasty scandal exposed. The true story of Rose Designs. 3 women, 2 decades of secrets, 1 shocking betrayal. Miranda Stone's past catches up. Gambling, theft, and broken friendships. Bastien stood in his office, throwing the newspapers on his desk in frustration. "How did this get out? We were handling it privately." Victoria burst in, her face tight with anger. "It was Jennifer. Security caught her on camera making calls to the press right after the board meeting. She's worked for Miranda this whole time. Where is she now? Gone. Cleared out her desk last night. But that's not our biggest problem." Victoria handed him her tablet. "Look at what's trending." Social media was exploding with the story, but not in the way they'd expected. Instead of condemning Miranda, people were captivated by the tale of friendship, sacrifice, and redemption. Rose Dawson was being hailed as a hero who gave up everything to protect her friends. The story had struck a chord with the public. "Have you seen Lily?" Bastien asked, running his hand through his hair. "She's in her office. The press has been calling non-stop." In her design studio, Lily sat surrounded by sketches, trying to focus on work, while her phone buzzed constantly. Her father had already called 3 times, worried about how she was handling the attention. There was a soft knock at the door. Miranda Stone stood there, looking more human than Lily had ever seen her. "May I come in?" Lily nodded, gesturing to a chair. "I've been sitting in my apartment all morning," Miranda said quietly, "reading what people are saying. About your mother, about me, about all of it. And for the first time in 25 years, I can breathe." "What do you mean?" "The secret's out, and the world didn't end. Your mother knew that would happen. She was always the wisest of us." Miranda pulled out an old photograph, the 3 young women in front of Rose Designs. "We were going to conquer the fashion world together. Catherine with her business sense, your mother with her incredible designs, and me with my connections. We thought nothing could stop us." "Until you did," Lily said, but without anger. "Yes, until I did." Miranda's eyes filled with tears. "I've spent 25 years trying to prove I was better than my mistake, building my company, becoming someone important, but I was still that scared young woman who betrayed her best friends." The door opened and Bastien walked in. His face hardened when he saw Miranda. "It's okay," Lily said quickly. "We're talking." "Well, I'm afraid talking time is over," Bastien said grimly. "The board is calling an emergency session. The press attention is affecting stock prices. They're demanding action." Miranda stood up straight. "They want my resignation." "Yes, then they'll have it. But first," Miranda turned to Lily, "I want to make this right. Not just an apology, but real action. I'm transferring control of Miranda Stone Designs to a new partnership, Elite Brands and Lily Dawson Designs. Together, you can create something new, something better than I ever could." Lily and Bastien stared at her in shock. "Why would you do this?" Lily asked. "Because it's what your mother would have done." She understood something I'm only learning now, that true success isn't about proving your worth by destroying others. It's about lifting each other up. Before anyone could respond, Victoria rushed in. "You need to see this." She turned on the TV. Diana Reynolds was doing a special report, but instead of scandal, she was talking about legacy and redemption. The story had transformed into something unexpected, a tale of 3 women whose friendship changed the fashion world and how their children were carrying that legacy forward. "The public loves it," Victoria said excitedly. "They're calling it the greatest fashion comeback story ever told. Everyone wants to know what Lily will design next, how she'll honor her mother's legacy while creating her own path." Bastien looked at Lily, concern in his eyes. "This is a lot of pressure. Are you sure you want to take this on?" Lily stood up, walking to her design wall where her sketches hung next to her mother's old ones. "This is exactly what I want. Not just for me, but for Mom, for Catherine, and yes, even for Miranda. We can't change the past, but we can build something beautiful from it." "Then let's do it right," Bastien said. He turned to Miranda. "The board meeting is in an hour. We'll present this as a strategic merger, not a resignation. Your experience, combined with Lily's fresh vision, a true legacy partnership." Miranda's eyes widened. "You'd do that? After everything? My mother saw the good in you, even at the end," Bastien said quietly. "Maybe it's time I honored her wisdom." As they prepared for the board meeting, Lily pulled Bastien aside. "Thank you for standing by me through all this." He touched her face gently. "Lily, you've taught me more about grace and strength in these few weeks than I've learned in my entire life. I'm not standing by you. I'm standing with you." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the chaos around them seemed to fade away. But before either could speak, Victoria cleared her throat. "Sorry to interrupt this moment, but we've got another situation. The Fashion Council is on the line. They want Lily to open Fashion Week next month." Lily's eyes went wide. "What? But that's impossible. I'd need a whole collection." "You've got help now," Miranda said, stepping forward, "and 25 years of making up to do." Bastien squeezed Lily's hand. "Say yes. Show the world what you can. Do." As Lily looked around at these people who had moved from strangers to family in just a few weeks, she felt her mother's presence strongly. This was more than a fashion show. It was a chance to heal old wounds and create new beginnings. "Yes," she said firmly. "But I have one condition." They all looked at her expectantly. "The collection will be called Rose Legacy, in honor of 3 women who dared to dream, lost their way, but found their way back to each other through the next generation." Outside the office, the press waited eagerly for news. But inside, something more than a business deal was taking shape. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would need all their strength, talent, and love to write. The morning of Fashion Week dawned clear and bright. Backstage at the venue, Lily stood surrounded by racks of clothing, the Rose Legacy collection that had consumed her life for the past month. Each piece told a story: strength, forgiveness, love, and the power of second chances. 10 minutes until showtime, a stagehand called out. Lily touched the final dress, a stunning creation in midnight blue, inspired by the gown she'd worn to Bastien's gala. But this one was different. She'd woven roses into the beading pattern, each one representing a piece of the story that had brought them all here. "It's perfect," said a voice behind her. Miranda stepped forward, looking elegant but softer somehow. The past month of working together had changed them all. Rose would be so proud. "We did it together," Lily said, hugging her. It still amazed her how the woman she'd once feared had become family. "Is everyone here? Your father's in the front row, probably telling everyone who'll listen that his daughter is the star of Fashion Week." Miranda smiled. "Victoria's handling the press and Bastien—" She paused. "He's being Bastien, checking every detail twice." As if summoned by his name, Bastien appeared. He'd loosened his tie, a sure sign of nerves. "The house is packed. Every major fashion editor, buyer, and critic in the industry is out there." Lily took a deep breath. "Good. I want them all to see this, to understand what it means." "Miss Dawson," a young assistant appeared. "There's someone who wants to see you. She says she has something that belongs in the show." An elderly woman stepped forward, elegant despite her age. In her hands was a garment bag. "Mrs. Chen?" Miranda gasped. "From the alterations shop next to Rose Designs?" The old woman nodded. "I've kept this safe for 25 years. Rose left it with me the night she left town. She said someday her daughter might need it." With trembling hands, Lily unzipped the bag. Inside was a wedding dress, but not just any wedding dress. It was the last design her mother had created, the one that was supposed to launch their spring collection before everything fell apart. "It's the hope dress," Miranda whispered. Rose designed it to represent new beginnings. We never got to show it. Lily touched the fabric gently. We'll show it today as the finale piece. But who will wear it? Miranda asked. All the models are assigned. I will, said a quiet voice. They turned to see Victoria in the doorway. If you'll let me, for my mother and for Rose. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she nodded. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The show began, and one by one, Lily's designs took the runway. Each piece told part of their story, from structured business wear representing Bastian's world, to flowing romantic pieces inspired by her mother's sketches, to bold, innovative designs that were purely Lily. The audience responded with increasing enthusiasm. Lily could see Diana Reynolds nodding approvingly in the front row, while buyers whispered excitedly to each other. Then came the finale. The lights dimmed, and Victoria appeared in Rose's wedding dress. A murmur went through the crowd, as those who remembered Rose's designs recognized the signature style. Henry wiped tears from his eyes as he watched his wife's last creation finally take its place in the spotlight. As Victoria made her final turn on the runway, Lily stepped out to take her bow. The applause was thunderous. But she wasn't finished. She gestured to Miranda, who joined her hesitantly, then to Bastian, who took her hand firmly in his. Together, they stood before the fashion world, the past and future united. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily spoke into the microphone, her voice strong and clear. This collection is called Rose Legacy, but it's not just about my mother. It's about 3 women who dared to dream big, about the children who carried their dreams forward, and about the power of forgiveness to transform tragedy into triumph. The audience rose in a standing ovation. In the front row, Henry held a framed photo of Rose, taken on the day she opened her shop. Somewhere Lily knew her mother was smiling. Later at the celebration party, Bastian found Lily on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. The buyers are fighting over the collection, he said, standing close to her. Diana Reynolds is calling it the debut of the decade. You did it, Lily. We did it, she corrected him. All of us. He turned her to face him. I've been thinking about what you said on stage, about transformation. When you came into my life, I was cold, cynical, convinced that power was the only thing that mattered. You changed everything. You changed yourself, Lily said softly. You just needed someone to remind you how. I need more than that, Bastian said, taking her hands in his. I need you, not just as a business partner or a friend. I love you, Lily Dawson. Your strength, your grace, your ability to see the best in people, even people who don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance, Lily whispered. My mother taught me that. Then give me a chance to prove I'm worthy of you, of this love that's grown between us. Inside, they could hear the party continuing. Miranda was laughing with Victoria, their old friendship renewed. Henry was sharing stories about Rose with young designers who hung on every word. The past and present had finally found peace with each other. You already have, Lily said, and drew him down for a kiss. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the garden below them bloomed with roses, the flowers Henry had planted, with such care. Like their love, like their family, like the legacy they would build together, the roses would continue to grow, season after season, proving that even the hardest hearts could bloom when tended with love and faith. The end.